Boom, we are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's your boy Nolan Hawkeye Anthony here, and I hope you guys are having a fantastic week wherever you may be, and of course, however you may be listening. I've got a really fun show for y'all today. Us together, we'll be taking a look at Iowa's roster and deciding who leaves and who stays. And of course, this is based on many factors. And of course, this is merely and almost totally speculation or speculative, which is okay. This is just a fun video, some fun entertainment, a thought exercise, as they say. But before we get into any of that, I want to mention going to 247hawkeye.com. And I really do hope you guys consider hitting that subscribe button. It really means a lot when you guys do that. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers. And you never know, your subscription could mean the difference altogether. But if you don't think I've earned your subscription, at the very least, like, comment. I try and respond to every single comment. And sharing and liking the video also helps a lot as well. Be sure to check in for the post and the pregame show. Iowa still has a bowl game to play. And as I'm recording this now, they still have the Big Ten championship game. So be sure to check in for the post and pregame show. And last but not least, I will be putting the PayPal link in the description. If you'd like to donate to the show, it would really mean a lot. I will put that in there for y'all. But without further ado, let's get into this. So right off the bat, guys, again, as I said in the beginning of this video, this is entirely speculative, okay? I do not know the minds of the player. All I can do is look at the tea leaves, as they say, which is what most quote-unquote Iowa insiders do. They don't have any inside information, and make somewhat of an educated guess. And I can also use my experience as a collegiate athlete or former collegiate athlete to make some sort of decision when it comes to whether these guys leave or stay. And obviously, there are a few different avenues. There's the NFL for some guys, and there's the transfer portal for others. And I also want to say, in general, okay, I am a big believer. When I was in college playing sports, it was nowhere near what it is now with NIL, with the transfer portal. You still had to sit out a year when deciding to transfer. And going back to what I was starting to say, I, for the most part, am a big believer that it is almost always better to stick it out. And Kirk Ferentz has referenced this in a few of his statements, than to transfer. And I'll tell you why. At the end of the day, the one key ingredient missing in the decision to transfer, and by the way, I'm not judging. It is what it is. It's no judgment. But the missing ingredient that a lot of these guys have is taking a look in the mirror and asking themselves, what have I not done to not get playing time? What could I do better? And a lot of times, if you don't ask yourself that question, you're going to run into the same problem at another school. And as we all know, it is very hit and miss with guys deciding to transfer. And I'll give a really good, solid explanation for kind of what I am talking about. By the way, if there's a coaching change or something drastic and big like that, or something close to being as big, then transferring, I get it. That's, but those are very rare circumstances. The example I want to use is Oliver Martin. Okay. I'm not saying he made the wrong decision transferring, but you look at this guy who was a consensus 4-star wide receiver, number 1 player in the state of Iowa, grew up in Iowa City, decides to go to Michigan after a few short years there, in which he got some playing time, decides to transfer to Iowa. Then, after 1 season at Iowa, in which he went back to the school that he spurned, and he got some playing time, not a ton, but he got some, he decided to transfer to Nebraska. And at Nebraska, where he got some playing time, he still is not a starter at Nebraska. Now he's at the end of his career. And you look back, let's just evaluate him at Iowa. There's a good chance that had he stuck it out, at Iowa, he would have been a top 3 receiver and at times a top 2. Brandon Smith got injured that one time. I can't remember if Amir Smith got injured, but instead of Oliver Martin taking over for Brandon Smith, it was Tyrone Tracy. Now, again, there's no guarantee that Oliver Martin would have been the guy to replace. And then I'll take it a step further. Had he stayed, he would have had a huge shot to get valuable snaps this year when ISM and Brandon Smith decided to go to the NFL. And the last thing that I want to say, when you decide to stick it out at a school, okay, is you get the lifelong connection with that school, whether it's relationships or resources, you get it for the rest of your life. And that is a big deal. Again, I'm not judging. I'm just laying a case out on why, for the most part, in my opinion, it is almost always better to just stick it out at the school that you ultimately chose in the first place. All right, guys, I have the depth chart for the Michigan game. As you guys can see here, it is the Big Ten championship game depth chart, big time, very cool. Let's start with the quarterbacks. Iowa already received a departure or desire to depart from Deuce Hogan, and I'll pull up his recruiting profile to show you guys how solid of a recruit Deuce Hogan was. As you guys can see here, 247 Sports wasn't super high on Deuce Hogan on their own recruiting site, but compositely, he was a high 3-star guy, and he had offers from everywhere. Georgia decided to push hard for him late, and he was the 2nd quarterback commit out of the state of Texas in a few short years. He has decided to enter the transfer portal. Now, the other guys on the Iowa roster, okay, I fully expect Joey Labus to stay at Iowa. Matter of fact, I think he is a big reason why Deuce Hogan decided to transfer. Joey Labus was put on the travel roster for the Iowa Hawkeyes, which does not happen very often. Most freshmen stay at home because, especially at Iowa, because they are continuing to develop. So I think there's a lot of promise with Joey Labus, and I think the early signs are positive. And I think at the very least, we can come to the conclusion that he was at the very least even with Deuce Hogan, that had both Spencer and Alex Padilla gotten hurt, it's likely that it would have been about a 50-50 decision, if not more, towards Joey Labus, the 6'4", high 3-star, low 4-star out of the state of Ohio. Now, what does this mean for Spencer Petras and Alex Padilla? Well, early in the season, I thought one of the guys was going to transfer, probably Alex Padilla, as he was the odd man out. But now that the season has gotten much further, and Alex Padilla has started in 3 games, and it's pretty much neck and neck. I think that both guys will decide to stay at Iowa and battle for the starting position. And I think there's a lot of fans that think Alex Padilla is definitely gone. And I just don't see it that way because he's this close to the starting position at Iowa. If his game gets just this much better, he's the starter. Right now, Spencer is the starter really only because the Iowa coaching staff feels comfortable with him in a big game, not necessarily because of how talented he is or anything like that. So it's neck and neck, and I think both guys will decide to stay at Iowa for the time being. And I also want to say, when I'm deciding this, this is who leaves and who stays by the time the next football season rolls around. So we have that whole time span to consider. But yes, Alex Padilla and Spencer Petras will both stay Iowa Hawkeyes, in my opinion. Next up, we have the tight end position, and Iowa already received the decision from high 3-star tight end out of Illinois, Josiah Meeman, who was in the class of 2019, who has decided to transfer. And again, I'm just not super big on the decision. You know, Iowa stuck by him even after the trouble he got into. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, again, are you asking yourself, have you done everything to earn playing time? And again, I got to be honest, outside of Sam Laporta, Luke Lachey really hasn't shown us enough to say that guy is a starter for the foreseeable future. So I think there is room for another tight end to get some snaps, if not take over the second option at the tight end position. But either way, Josiah Meeman has decided to transfer. And of course, he got into a little bit of trouble over the offseason. He was a nice recruit, but it just did not work out. And let's take a look here at the rest of the tight ends. Sam Laporta, will he leave or will he stay when it comes to the NFL? And the guy did not have as big of a season as I thought he was going to have, but he still had a solid season. He is by far probably the best option Iowa has outside of Tyler Goodson. It's him and Tyler Goodson. Those are the two best offensive weapons that Iowa has. I know some people would say Keegan Johnson. Okay, fair enough. He's probably number 3, or Arlen Bruce, they're kind of tied in that position. Either way, Sam Laporta is a very, very strong option, and he had a really good season. He is the leading receiver for the Iowa Hawkeyes, but ultimately, looking at the PFF grades, looking at the All Big Ten selection, which I believe he was a third team member and an honorable mention. So third team and honorable mention. I think Sam Laporta returns for a 4th year of pretty much starting snaps. I mean, the guy has started since pretty much his freshman year. I think he comes back to the Iowa Hawkeyes. If he decided to go to the NFL, do I think he would get drafted? Actually, yeah, I do. I think he would because of Iowa's tradition, and I think he would test well. I think he'd probably get drafted anywhere from the 5th to the 7th round, and he can block. So, but ultimately, I think he decides to come back. Luke Lachey, same thing. The only other tight end, scholarship tight end Iowa has, and they have 2 tight ends coming in who are going to be true freshmen, is Elijah Yelverton, the Under Armour All-American, former Under Armour All-American, high 3-star tight end, huge get out of Texas. This is a tough one because we haven't really heard a ton of speculation. So this one, I'm making a guess almost entirely on if I just in general, if I think he is willing to stick it out and battle for a position. I mean, at the end of the day, if you really think about it, hypothetically, Sam Laporta comes back, Elijah Yelverton, after one more year, would have a significant path to get into the top two, if not next year. Because like I said, I'm not sure Lachey is 100% the future of the Iowa tight end position. Elijah Yelverton has dealt with injuries. So again, I'm not 100% sure. I think Elijah Yelverton decides to transfer and put his name into the transfer portal. He just hasn't really gotten the momentum at Iowa. I really hope he stays because I think he is the prototypical tight end. And I do really believe that there is room or path for him to show the coaches that he is the number 2 option at tight end. But ultimately, if I have to decide, I think he decides to transfer. All right, guys, let's start rolling through these. I don't want this to be an hour-long video. Let's go to the running back position. Tyler Goodson has had a 1,000-yard season. He's had a really nice season. He was a third-team All-Big Ten selection. Do I think he goes to the NFL? No, I do not. I think he comes back to the Iowa Hawkeyes, gives them one more season, and because I just don't think he would get drafted. I think there's a lot of other running back prospects that are really talented in an era where there's only so many running backs that are selected. I think Tyler Goodson comes back. And do I think Tyler Goodson has a future NFL career? Sure. Any former Iowa starter almost always has potential because they're very well coached and fundamentally sound. Let's keep rolling down the running back position. And Ivory Clay Martin will be graduating. It's Gavin Williams and LaShawn Williams. Gavin Williams, I fully expect to come back to the Iowa Hawkeyes. He is the number 2 option. But unfortunately, I think LaShawn Williams, man, this one is tough because for sure with Tyler Goodson, I'm not even sure 100% if he decides to stay, but going down the rabbit hole or the logic of him coming back, I do think ultimately LaShawn Williams decides to put his name into the portal, which Iowa is still in a really good spot. And really the reason I believe that is because Iowa has 2 really, really high caliber running backs coming in with Caleb Johnson, high 3-star out of Ohio, and Josiah Patterson, the 4-star out of Florida. I think that leaves LaShawn Williams as the odd man out, and I think he decides to put his name into the transfer portal. On the offensive line, I'm going to talk about 2 guys that potentially could leave, or maybe 3. I'll throw Kyler Schott in there because I believe he has a chance to come back with the COVID year. But I do not think Kyler Schott decides to come back to the Iowa Hawkeyes. I'll just nip that in the bud now. Tyler Linderbaum. This is a big one. This one is actually much harder than you would expect because of how much the guy loves the Iowa Hawkeyes. And the NFL will still be there. But if I had to guess, just because of how great of a season he's done, how much he's accomplished at Iowa, getting Iowa to a Big Ten championship, I think Tyler Linderbaum has accomplished everything he can at Iowa. I believe he's going to get the top center award. I forget what that's called. I think it's the Remington Trophy. The Remington Trophy. He already won the Orlando Pace Offensive Lineman of the Year award. He's done everything. And I ultimately think that there's just not enough for him to accomplish. The only things left for him to accomplish are in the NFL. I think Tyler Linderbaum decides to go to the NFL. But would I be shocked if he decided to come back like Brandon Sheriff did? No, I wouldn't really be surprised because, again, he is a diehard Iowa Hawkeye fan. And the other offensive lineman to take into account is the former four-star out of Iowa, Tyler Andres. And he gone. I think he will be gone. The two high recruits out of, I believe it was the 2019 recruiting class. Let me pull that up here. It might be the 2020 recruit. Nope, 2019. Ezra Miller and Tyler Andres right here. They just didn't work out. And perhaps their rankings were a little bit too high. I don't know what's going on with Tyler Andres, but there's just a lot of guys in front of him right now. Young guys too. Jack Plum, Mason Richmond, Nick DeYoung, Tyler Ellsbury. There's veteran guys and young guys in front of him. I think he decides to transfer. All right, guys, last but not least on the offense is the wide receiver position. And I've already hinted to this a little bit. And let's just start with the Nico Reganey. Let's start with him. Nico Reganey is going to come back to the Iowa Hawkeyes. He has gotten solid snaps. He is very much a part of the Iowa Hawkeye rotation. Charlie Jones. What does Charlie Jones decide to do? Well, Iowa, to be honest, could really use him coming back next year. I mean, the dude is really talented, especially as a return man. But if we are projecting what the wide receiver position, the young guys coming up in the future, I don't really see Charlie Jones carving out a bigger role than what he has now. And I'll tell you why. Keegan Johnson and Arlen Bruce are only going to get better. Not to mention Iowa having guys like Deontay Vines, Brody Brecht, young guys like that who are really talented. As it stands right now, the three guys will all be back. The three guys getting a lot of snaps. Keegan Johnson, Arlen Bruce, and Nico Reganey. And of course, Iowa could use the only other type of wide receiver Iowa could use is a big-bodied Brandon Smith type. So, and I don't think Charlie Jones really has that. I think it's time for him to try his hand in the NFL. Is there a chance he decides to come back? Sure, but I think he decides to depart. The other wide receiver to take into account is Deontay Vines. I don't really know. We haven't really heard much about him. For now, I'm going to say he decides to stay because he still is a young guy, even though my heart is telling me he's going to transfer. And last but not least, Tyrone Tracy. There has been a lot of tea leaves going on here with his family and Tyrone Tracy himself on Twitter expressing a desire to get more attempts in the passing game, I suppose, or just get more action in the game. I don't think he is as happy as the Iowa media is trying to make it seem at Iowa. And I think the writing is kind of on the wall with Keegan Johnson and Arlen Bruce being the future. They are the future. And the bottom line is, guys, the Iowa coaching staff gave Tyrone Tracy a shot. They did. They really, really did. They gave him 7 games, and it just didn't happen. Now, was that partly the quarterback and this and the play? Sure. Okay. But the bottom line is Keegan Johnson and Arlen Bruce, who have had the same excuses that they could make, have done much better. I believe Tyrone Tracy decides to transfer from the Iowa Hawkeyes at the end of the season. All right, Hawk fans, let's take a look at the defense really quickly. And the defense is a little bit different in that they have a lot more options when it comes to potentially leaving for the NFL draft. Here we go. Well, let's start with Dane Belton, okay? The about 3-year starting safety cash guy out of Florida. And I got to say, this one is really difficult because I remember when Amani Hooker, who played in a very similar position, Geno Stone, especially Geno Stone, decided to leave early. And particularly Geno Stone, it was kind of surprising to me because I really did think he could improve his draft stock by coming back. And I do think Dane Belton could do the same thing. You know, Dane Belton could come back and have a 4 or 5 interception type season. But let's take a look at his stats real quick. The guy has 41 total tackles and 5 INTs. Would he come back next year and do that much better than the type of season he had this year? I don't know. And the bottom line is this guy has a ton of tape. He has a ton of experience that the guys before him have done the same thing. Geno Stone, Amani Hooker, and Micah Hyde, and they always work out the hybrid safety / corner type guys. They always work out. And Dane Belton is much more athletic than I believe people give him credit for. I think he can play safety in college. I think he has put in his time at the University of Iowa. I believe he was, I'm going to look it up, a second team All Big Ten defensive selection. So here it is. Dane Belton was selected along with Riley Moss as an All Big Ten by both coaches and media. I don't know how much more he can do. So I believe, as much as it pains me to say, that Dane Belton will probably decide to go to the NFL. And the other guys, while we're on the DBs, would be Riley Moss. And this is an interesting one because I'm not sure that a guy like Riley Moss, unfortunately, and I don't really care to get into why, will get the same respect that he has inside of the Big Ten after doing what he has done. And the bottom line is the guy has been a starter since he was a freshman. I mean, he is as good as it gets. And I absolutely expect Riley Moss to dominate the NFL Combine when he decides to go. He does have a chance to come back to this Iowa Hawkeye team, but he has already been an Iowa Hawkeye for, I believe, 5 seasons. I am leaning more towards Riley Moss deciding to go pro instead of coming back to Iowa. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if either decide to come back. You know, if Riley Moss is not satisfied with his with the feedback he gets back from the NFL, I can absolutely see him coming back. But the dude is literally won the Big Ten Tatum Woodson Award as the best DB in the Big Ten. I mean, what else? What more can he do? Now, looking at the linebackers, Seth Benson, Jack Campbell, and I can't believe I just blanked out his name, Justin Jacobs. Very good trio of guys. I think you can pencil Seth Benson coming back for his senior year, pencil him in. Jack Campbell, this one is really, really tough because I think he would test well. I think he will get solid feedback from the NFL. Physically, you know, he is a specimen. The dude is 6'4" and can defend sideline to sideline. I am going to lean more towards Jack Campbell coming back. I don't know why, but I just kind of feel that is going to come back. I don't really know why. I just think he will return to this Iowa Hawkeye team for his senior season. But he could also go. But I am going to lean more towards him coming back. And Justin Jacobs, who I think also technically could put his name into the NFL draft, will decide to come back as well. Other than that, guys, that's pretty much it. I mean, the defensive line has all young guys. Every single guy on the two deeps will absolutely come back unless they are going to graduate, like Joe Evans and Zach Van Valkenburg. I do think Zach Van Valkenburg has a shot to play in the NFL. He'll probably get drafted in the 6th or 7th round, depending how he does on his testing. I mean, the bottom line is Iowa defensive linemen, regardless of how great they are, when they get drafted, for the most part, they don't disappoint. They are good team players. They'll give you some production, and it is just fine. But folks, that is about it. I will kind of scroll through the roster here and just kind of rattle, stay, or leave for you. Like I said, Deontay Vines, I think, decides to leave, but that I'm about 50-50 on. Deuce Hogan is already gone. Tyrone Tracy, I said, I believe he will be gone. Let's keep on rolling through here. AJ Lawson is a good one. The 3-star DB out of Illinois. I think he comes back because there's an opportunity at corner. I mean, both Matt Hankins and Riley Moss will likely be gone for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Dallas Credieth is an interesting one. The dude was a 4-star safety out of Missouri. A huge get for the Iowa Hawkeyes. It just didn't happen. I mean, Iowa just has had better DBs. And especially at the safety position, there's even more talent coming up, especially if Iowa lands 5-star Xavier Nwankpa. I think he decides to stay. I mean, he stayed at Iowa thus far. I think he is the type of guy who is comfortable with the position he has carved out for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Brendan Day Fernandez, I believe, comes back. Like I said, there are positions on the defensive backfield that will be open. Devin Hilson will come back. I'm excited to see what he looks like. Xavier Williams, I do think could come back. I do think because of the COVID year, he could come back. And he is in the two deeps. It's just the Iowa Hawkeyes are so good that he just hasn't been able to break through. If he does have a COVID year left, I think he comes back, and that would be a huge boost for the Iowa Hawkeyes for him to come back. The Iowa Hawkeyes are looking to be loaded next year because guaranteed I'm going to be wrong on about 50% of my selections. Iowa will have a ton of talent coming back. Sebastian Castro, I believe, comes back. Of course, he is in the two deeps as we keep rolling through here. That is about it, guys. I mean, all the other guys are really, really young or guys who have broken the two deeps as young guys. I'm just trying to make sure that I haven't missed anybody significant. Justin Britt, I think, loves being an Iowa Hawkeye. I've seen his mom tweet some stuff. I think he really enjoys being an Iowa Hawkeye, and he'll have a shot to get significant playing time. Connor Colby is pretty much penciled in, but if Tyler Linderbaum and Kyler Schott leave, there's 2 spots along the offensive line to carve out a role, and Justin Britt got some pretty significant playing time this year as it is. Again, just trying to make sure that Desmond Hudson, the wide receiver out of Missouri, has already decided to transfer. He was the first one, and I was kind of, I thought eventually he would get some playing time. Like I said, with the departure of Brandon Smith, Iowa has needed a guy who could go up and get 50-50 balls. That's the one element that they're missing, is a guy that they could just, back shoulder and get it. And but there is Brody Brecht, the 6'4" guy, and there is a high 3-star wide receiver out of Illinois. Let me see if I can pull up him real quick. Jacob Bostic. Sorry, guys. I mean, so many names to remember. So this will about do it, guys. I think I've ran through nearly everybody, and I think I'm pretty satisfied with my selections. Be sure to subscribe. As always, I really, really hope you help me get to 1,000 subs. This is a community. This is an Iowa Hawkeye community. We're doing this together, one video at a time. But if you don't think I've earned your subscription, at the very least, like, comment. I try to get to every comment. Be sure to check in for the post in the pregame show, Iowa versus Michigan, Big Ten chip. And I will be putting the link in the description for the PayPal if you want to donate to the show. And last but not least, DDAP, don't be a pussy willow. In fact, our feelings don't matter. Love y'all. Go Hawks. Bye.